Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an Airbus A330 pilot, and welcome to our next real ops, this time featuring the Discover Airlines Airbus A330-300 on a flight from Frankfurt to Philadelphia. Before we start setting up the aircraft itself, let's go ahead by checking out our flight plan as the pilots would usually do prior to the flight. We are starting this one right on SimBrief, and you can already see our basic plan over here, but let's go ahead and have a look at the PDF version, which in my opinion is a little bit more comprehensive than the default SimBrief layout. So this is going to be our route of flight. We're departing Frankfurt to the northwest and then going across London, south of Ireland, across Nut Track Alpha, all the way over to the United States for our arrival into Philadelphia. The significant weather charts do promise a little bit of an exciting flight, unfortunately, with a little bit of turbulence from the jet stream about at the entry of the North Atlantic. Then we are going to cross the Atlantic, and on the other end side we are crossing another jet stream which will be right opposite to our track, which means that some turbulence is likely to be expected there. The only hope we have for that jet stream over here is that its core is in flight level 320, so we can hopefully expect climb above that rather soon. Now, one of the good things about the A330 is you can easily reach level 400 even at the very high weights, so I'm kinda hoping that we'll be able to climb above this jet stream. Now, if we have a look at the little bit more detailed weather, then we can see there are a couple of SIGMATs over here, but those shall not be much of our concern today. So let's have a look at the local airport weather. Frankfurt is looking very good here, 070 at 7, so runway 07 for the departure. Overcast clouds, 1 degree, QNH 1030, and our destination Philadelphia. Currently negative temperatures down there, but during the day that should rise a little bit as the sun comes up. And then later on we're looking at westerly winds, good visibility and high-lying clouds, hopefully giving us a very good view on our way into Philly. Now the alternate, Baltimore, is looking good just like Philly, and the other alternates, Kennedy, very good, Newark, also good. Now let's have a look at our ETOPS airports, and we are starting with Shannon, and Shannon actually has very good weather conditions up here. Next up we have Lajes, and in Lajes they do forecast some gusts along a northerly vector, so that's alright. And then we've got St. John's, and St. John's is not all that good. Now, if we're wondering, so how do I determine exactly for what time I even need to have a look at that weather, then let's go ahead and scroll up a little bit to the ETOPS section in the flight plan, and in here we can get that kind of information. So down here we can see the weather permissibility period, and we can see that for Shannon we have an earliest ETA at 15:52, latest at 16:47, and the same applies to all the other airports, as you can see down here and down here, even though I have to say that these times do not look all that realistic today. 15:52, we're departing at around 1200. Yeah, okay, we'll let it slide. So we're looking at the weather in the region around 1800 UTC. So let's go back down and analyze what we are going to find there. So 18 UTC, we can see that from 18 UTC we actually have very good weather over here at St. John's. Prior to that, however, we're looking at tempo 1300 to 1800, no significant weather, scattered 800, and then thereafter we're looking at good weather conditions. Now, since this is a tempo weather, we also have to take into account the base state of the weather, that's over here. So overcast 800, light rain, which overall are pretty good conditions for the winter on the North Atlantic. Alright, so with that out of the way, let's have a look at the flight plan itself. We're going to be the Ocean 50 today from Frankfurt to Philly, and we have a rather heavy zero fuel weight, so probably lots of cargo on this route. Takeoff weight 223 tons roughly. Flight level 360 is going to be our initial flight level. We'll cross the North Atlantic in level 370 and then later on climb to level 380 at Raffin for the remainder of our flight. Now let's scroll down a little bit. Flying via nut track alpha, we are going to get to that later on. In terms of the fuel, the minimum is 54.6 plus the taxi gets us rounded up to 55 tons. Do we see any reason to take extra? Well, not really, to be honest. However, just in case we do gather some delay, I want to take a bit more fuel. So let's go ahead and load up 1,500 extra. So let's make it 56.5. And whenever we increase the fuel, also got to check the landing weight to make sure that in case we don't need it, that we're still below the maximum landing weight, which we are today, so that's just about perfect. Alright, that much for our basic check of the flight plan. There is one more thing that's going down into the dispatch info. Nut track alpha, we got to check that the flight plan has actually been planned correctly there. So we can see that flight level 370 is available, the next one is 390, so level 380 is not available on that nut, which doesn't mean that we can't request it later on, of course. If ATC grants it, they grant it. And the waypoints on that one are from Adara, 5120, 4930, 4740, 4550, and then Rafin. And if we just go ahead and check that one in the route, then we can see that those are correctly planned over here. Okay, perfect. So then we can go ahead and enter our cockpit as we can start to prepare our aircraft for the service today. So, basic things. Engine masters off, engine start, switch in the norm position, the weather radar is calibrated, weather and turbulence, and the ground control system is on. We can select the tilt up a little bit, and the gear lever is down, the wipers are off. Then, battery voltages are checked and looking good, so let's go ahead and power the aircraft up. Batteries on, external power on. Like that. Very good. So, while the aircraft is powering up, let's go over into the electronic flight bag here, import our flight plan from SimBrief, and then we can also import our OFP, which it has done automatically, onto the payload page, where we can once again import our data, and we said we wanted 56.5, so 56500, into the load, apply, instant, thank you. Excellent. So, refueling is in progress. The plane's still starting up down here. That's about fine. Our cockpit lights are set as needed. Then let's go ahead and do the APU fire test, as I want to get my air conditioning going. So that's looking good. APU master switch on and APU start switch on. Okay, IRSs 1, 2, 3 going into nav. And while everything is starting up, let's go ahead with our preparations. So, next thing we want to know that we can actually take off. So let's go in here, Frankfurt, 25 center, that's correct. Synchronize the weather. Takeoff weight, let's see, we have 224 planned, plus 1,500 kilos. So we're looking at a takeoff weight that's going to be approximately 224 tons to keep it conservative here. So weight, going to be 224. Conv 2, packs off, anti-ice, probably off. Calculate. So takeoff weight is going to be maximum 233 tons, and the speeds are looking good. I'm happy with that. Okay, so now to verify that our aircraft is fit for service, let's do the recall, and that's looking excellent. We do have our standard 3 OEBs, which are incorrect vertical profile during non-precision approaches, pack flow monitoring, and cabin pressure access cabin altitude. I don't think we need to discuss these, as we have just talked about them on our last flight already. Oxygen is good, hydraulic quantity is good, and then let's have a look at the engine oil, which is okay as well, even though they could probably refill it a little bit further, but it's fine like that. Alright, the flaps are in agreement with the lever, the ground spoilers are retracted. Let's test our alternate brake system, which is looking very good. Okay, wonderful. So with that, our aircraft is fit for service. Then let's go ahead and start our pre-flight preparations. So that's looking good so far. Then today's QNH is 1031. Set clock to GPS. Everything over here is looking good. Over here is looking good. So comms on 122.8 and 121.5. Like that, and we want to make sure that we listen to VHF 1, VHF 2 to the interphone, and I want to be sure that I actually hear something, so let's turn the speaker on as well. Then here everything's set, TCAS and transponder are set. Very good. Well, then we can go straight into the FMS preparation. A330-300, Trent engines, current database. The previous crew has been smart and deleted their custom waypoints. So let's go ahead and do the init request. The route uplink is here, and we're going from Frankfurt to Philly, alternate Baltimore, Ocean 50, Corsair X10, flight level 360, that's looking good. Frankfurt, departure, 7 center, and we've got the Oboka to Dickshift. And insert that, and for the arrival in Philly we're looking at an ILS approach onto runway 27 right for the time being. And our arrival is the GIMS 4 arrival coming in from Briggs. Insert that. Then let's get ourselves some charts. So Frankfurt, and we are departing off 07 center, looking for the Delta procedures. And we can clip those to the board. Nope, that's not the correct page. So, Delta ANA for overlay or RMP sets. In the real world, this is so much easier. You just look for the name of the SID, you get the correct chart, you don't have to worry. So we don't want the echoes, we do want the deltas. The only question is, on which chart are we gonna find them? Maybe the ANA overlay chart? Yeah, that looks more like it. Okay, good. So our SID is going straight at 800 feet. Then we've got Delta Foxtrot 149, our maximum 220 knots, which we have in here. Left turn to Metro, Odaga, Kuzom, Gubax, Rafki, Ditam, Oboka, and that's it. That's the Oboka to Delta departure already complete. As we're on it, let's go ahead and remove that discontinuity down here, and then we can check our North Atlantic waypoints straight away as well. So we're starting at Adara. OFP, scroll down that little bit. So, starting at Adara, then we have 5120. And that's indeed 5120. Then we've got 4930, and that looks okay in there, and matches what we have in here. Then 4740, which checks. 4550. And that's okay as well. And thereafter Raffin, which is looking good as well. Alright, wonderful. Then let's go ahead and enter the engine outset. We are going to go via Frankfurt X1, which is the emergency waypoint. And that's going to be EDDF 07 center /066 /25 miles. Okay, store that one. Secondary flight plan, copy active, and then FRA X1. Goes in here, holding over there at 066, right hand turn and 1 minute holding. And in case of an immediate return, we will come back to Frankfurt, of course. ILS approach Zulu 7 center, insert, and that's it. So, secondary performance approach 1031. We've got 3 degrees, the wind is 100 at 6. Like that, and the minimums on this one 530. With a conv 3 landing, well no, conv full. We'll keep that. In case of engine failure we can still redo that. Alright, and that's our secondary prepared. Then onto the fix info, EDDF07 center. Radial 066, and then FRA X1. Like that is looking good. Nothing on the navrat. Over here we are going to go with our departure runway, so Frankfurt 7 center. Then onto the performance in it. And then here we do have 0 fuel 167.9. And 25 CG. Then we're looking at a fuel of 56.5. Taxi 0.5. So wind component, average headwind of 20 knots. Like that. And now for our fuel figures. Contingency 1.5, alternate 2.6, final reserve 2.3. So we have 1.5, 2.6, and 2.2 is okay. I don't trust that fuel figure down here, so we are gonna ignore that. So, performance, flaps 2 takeoff, and we had 50 degrees of flex temperature. And that's with takeoff speeds 164, 169, 172. Okay, reduction and acceleration are looking good. Let's make it 1500 for the engine out acceleration. Takeoff weight is above 200 tons, so we go with a D-rate climb 1. And the last thing we can do then is to enter our step climbs. So, step outs. And we want flight level 370 at Adara. And then we're looking at flight level 380 at Raffin. Okay, and that should be all we need. So, flight directors on, QNH 1031, like that. VOR displays on. Initial climb is 5000 on this SID. And that's it. Okay, I think that's our setup completed. So, let's go ahead with our departure briefing, please. Okay. Frankfurt, runway 07 center. Oboka 2 Delta departure, climbing 5,000 feet, MSA 4,300, and extra fuel is in the region of around 15 minutes, 1.5 tons. Thank you. Hotspots for taxi. Pretty much everything that has wheels fitted under it on this entire airport, okay? So good look outside, make sure that we don't run into anything that's got wheels. And anything else. Stop margin rejected takeoff is about 5 meters. Engine out sits straight at 25 miles, pick up the holding. If we need to make an immediate return, Frankfurt is available. We are overweight, but 7 center is programmed, and the overweight is not going to be much of an issue today. We do have 4 kilometers of runway, we need around 2.5. Now, other than Frankfurt, I don't really see any options that would make obvious sense. If for whatever reason we need to divert, Cologne is also in the area and usable, Stuttgart is as well. In terms of special operations, we have a 220 knot restriction on the SID initially, so we are going to maintain the flaps in Conv 1. And I do not have anything non-standard. Threats for the departure? No? Okay. In that case, cockpit preparation checklist, please. Gear pins and covers removed. Fuel quantity 56,460 kilos balanced. Seatbelts on, ADIRS. Nav, Baroref, QNH 1031. Cockpit preparation checklist complete. Okay, and then we can go ahead with the NUT HLA guideline straight away as well. So aircraft acceptance, ETOPS PDSC checked, RVSM equipment checked, clock in GPS mode checked, HF checked, message log erased, ADSC armed, ATC auto position reports off, IRS full alignment performed, ground speed checked 0, NUT HLA waypoints on OFP versus primary flight plan cross-checked, and wind data entered. Well, actually we only have the average wind in there. Let's go ahead and request the actual wind. So, wind data entered, NUT HLA guideline complete down to prior Oceanic entry. Alright, so this is a good moment to get GSX to prepare the position for pushback and departure, please. Handling by Fraport, because why not? They are closing up the doors. And they can disconnect the external power units as well. Let's also close that bulk. Toggle GPU. So that's all good for the time being. Now this would be a good moment for the load sheet to arrive, but since the load sheet isn't here yet, let's say hello to our passengers. Liebe Gäste, einen schönen guten Tag aus dem Cockpit, hier spricht Ihr Kapitän. Mein Name ist Emanuel, im Namen der Discover Airlines darf ich Sie herzlich an Bord unseres Fluges 5.0 nach Philadelphia willkommen heißen. Die heutige Flugzeit ist mit 8,5 Stunden berechnet. Wir erwarten einige Starkwindfelder über dem Nordatlantik, welche möglicherweise für einige Turbulenzen sorgen können. Aus dem Grund bleiben Sie bitte angeschnallt, auch wenn die Anschnallzeichen ausgeschaltet sein sollten. Wir melden uns noch einmal mit den neuesten Wetterdaten, wenn wir uns im Anflug auf Philadelphia befinden, und bis dahin wünschen wir Ihnen einen schönen Aufenthalt bei uns an Bord. Ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning from the flight deck. This is your captain speaking. My name is Emanuel. In the name of Discover Airlines, I would like to welcome you all on board our flight 50 towards Philadelphia. Today's flight time has been calculated at 8.5 hours. We expect a couple of turbulences across the North Atlantic as we're crossing some strong jet streams on our way today. For this reason, please keep your seatbelt fastened whenever the seatbelt sign is turned on, and also when the seatbelt sign is not turned on. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you for being our guests today. Sit back, relax, enjoy the flight with us, and we get back to you with the latest weather information as soon as we start our approach to Philadelphia. Thank you for your attention, and again, welcome aboard. Alright, the guests are happy, the APU is running, ground power has already been removed. Then let's do our load sheet. So 167.9 and 26.8. We have 167.9 and 26.8. So gross weight CG 28.8, and that matches the load sheet. Trim 3.1 units up. Like that. Okay. Ground from cockpit. Go ahead. So, confirmed doors hatches closed, ground equipment removed, bypass pin installed. That's all confirmed. Roger, we are getting the pushback clearance. And the B4 start checklist, please. Park and brake. Set, takeoff speeds and thrust. V1 164, VR 169, V2 172, flex 50. Windows. Closed, beacon on, B4 start checklist complete. Okay, ground flight. Go ahead. So, we are clear to push and the parking brake is set. Runway 07 center, so facing west, please. Roger, stand by. So, November facing west. That's correct. Okay, release brakes. Brakes released. Roger, start and push, stand by for further. Standing by. Okay, flight at ground, you're clear to start the engines. Thank you, starting in sequence 1, then 2. Engine 1 start. Clear 1. And it sounds like they do have a new squawk for us. New squawk 6312. And that's in here, checked. Okay, engine start is looking good, progressing normally, just like it should. And we have a good start on engine number 1, starting engine number 2. Clear 2. Engine 2 start. Pushback complete, set park and brake. Park brake set. So we push back around 5 minutes late, that is not gonna be a problem. Okay, we have 2 good engine starts. You're clear to disconnect, show me the pin on the right hand side please, and have a wonderful day. Bye bye. Whoa, for a reason when I looked up I was like, are we rolling forward? But no, it was just the tuck going backwards. Well, that kind of stuff definitely does happen. Okay, so here comes the tuck. And now we're just looking for the ramp agent, and there she is. Right, walking away after start checklist. Anti-ice, off, ecom status checked, pitch trim 28.8%, rudder trim, neutral, after start checklist complete. So, clear on the right side, clear on the left side, taxi. Brake check. Pressure 0. Okay, so November 3, Lima all the way to the holding point. We'll delay the flight control check until we're out there on Lima so that we don't have to worry about looking inside for the flight controls while also looking outside for all those vehicles over there. Here is another road that is prone to people just going over it because they want to take a shortcut. You know, I can make it before that plane comes. Okay, off to the left into November 3. Okay, clear right side, clear left side. And out onto Lima. So as I mentioned a couple times, in the turns the A330 has a tendency to lose speed rather rapidly, so we might just have to help it a bit. Okay, flight control track. Full up. Full down. Neutral. Full left. Full right, neutral. And we know the rudder works. Unfortunately, the tiller disconnect button isn't simulated properly, so we can't really check it here. I will wait with turning the weather radar on until we're a little bit further down over here so that we don't radiate all our firefighters. We might still need them later on. And of course the general notice here, the aircraft should roll much faster in idle thrust. We shouldn't need any power at all to move the aircraft here, but unfortunately it is what it is. Okay, so weather conditions stayed exactly as we briefed them. At least by looking outside and also by looking inside. So takeoff calculations at 224 tons are definitely valid. We are at 224.1 at the moment. We are going to burn that, so 224 is looking good. Alright, then I have no changes to the takeoff briefing. Taxi checklist. Flight controls, checked. Flap setting, conf 2. Radar and predictive wind shear, on and auto. Engine start selector, norm. Ecam memo, takeoff, no blue. Taxi checklist, complete. In the real world, on a taxi like this, the airplane would continuously accelerate and it would even go past 30 knots on idle thrust, so you would have to apply some strategic braking. The brake temperature is one of the most important things to monitor during the taxi, next to, of course, the speed and obstacles, because the brakes can heat up really, really quickly. You basically don't want to use the brake fan unless the brakes are reaching a critical limit of around 500 degrees or more, but below that you want to avoid using the brake fan. Now, in the real world, the brakes, as I mentioned, heat pretty quickly, and the limit for takeoff is 300 degrees, so you want to make sure that they don't get warmer than that. For this reason, the entire airplane needs to be taxied somewhat strategically, so basically with the engines in idle as much as possible, since any usage of the engines above idle all inserts energy into the system that you will have to dissipate later on using the wheel brakes, and you really don't want to use them too often. Now, one of my line trainers back in the day just said that every brake application you do during the taxi costs about $40. So for this reason, let it accelerate up to 30 knots, then brake it back down to 10, let it accelerate again, and so on. That's the Airbus recommended procedure, and you should really consider following this. So there comes our holding point. The cabin is ready for departure, then we can report ready to tower as well. And Ocean 50, runway 07 center, cleared for takeoff. So, performance was calculated using Lima 21, so let's make sure that we take that. Cabin crew, prepare for departure. Clear on the approach. A little bit of oversteering technique to get it properly around the turn. Lineup checklist, please. Takeoff runway 07 center, Lima 21. TCAS, Tara, PAX 1 and 2. Off, lineup checklist complete. So, be a little bit careful during the lineup that we don't squash any of those lights there with the main gear. It is a long aircraft after all. Okay. Are you ready to go? Yes. Take off. Manflex 50, SS runway auto thrust blue. Thrust set, checked. .100 knots, checked. Rotate. Positive climb. Gear up. Nav. Checked. The pitch is a little bit low in the simulation. It should be 15 degrees. In the simulation it's more like 10. That's certainly not correct. Thrust declimb 1, climb auto thrust. Flaps 1. Speed checked. Flaps 1. So, flap auto retraction, which is normal, by the way. Engine anti-ice on. Engine anti-ice is on. Okay, climb flight level 90. I really like to hand fly the aircraft, just because you don't fly all that much on long haul anyway, and after all, it is fun, isn't it? Flap 0. Speed checked. Flaps 0. Okay, and that's our acceleration flow complete. Very good. Autopilot 1. So, we passed 4,300, that means we're above the MSA now. No need to worry about flying into the tunnels any longer. A little bit of cloud surfing. Wonderful, isn't it? Set standard. Standard cross check, passing flight level 48 now. Checked. Right, engine anti-ice off. Well, and with that, we're up and on the way. So, let's see. Estimated arrival time, 18:53, and the schedule is 2100. Okay, there is something wrong in this. There's definitely something wrong in that calculation. 12:18. Yeah, our times are correct. Okay, not sure why the FMS calculates what it calculates, but we can ignore that. We can certainly ignore that. Alright, so beautiful cloud layers. Beautiful paint. Well, then let's continue our climb. Flight level 220. And I'd say just by the looks outside, probably gonna wait with the seatbelts until we are past the second cloud layer over there. Just look at these clouds. That's just looking so awesome. Some might just call this a cloud simulator, but I tell you honestly, if I'm looking at pretty scenery for the next 8 hours straight, then I'm rather happy with that. Now, we'll keep the climb rate in until the rate of climb drops somewhere around 600-700 feet a minute, and that should be more than good enough for us. So, approaching 10,000. lights off, we can go for the airports over here. In the real world, I'd usually keep it on constraints, because it would show us the minimum safe altitudes, respectively the minimum off-route altitude, on the nav display, which is a rather useful feature. Alright, clear and copy. And then we have optimum 354, cruising 360, maximum 371, so 360 sounds pretty good to me indeed. So let's take flight level 360 as our first cruise level. Might as well go for a small shortcut over here to Oboka, or looking into this. Yeah, probably even Tornu. In the real world they give you that quite a lot. So, direct Tornu. Insert. So, what's the temperature? +7. Okay, engine anti-ice on. Well, my friends, and that's gonna do it for now. I see you all a little bit later as we are progressing along the flight. All crews, flight level 360 blue. So we're about an hour and 25 minutes in the air, and we are approaching our NUT entry point, Adara, in around 30 minutes. So let's go ahead and prepare the aircraft for the NUT entry. We're going to start by entering our Oceanic waypoint, so let's go into new waypoints, and we'll start with an entry number 1. In the real world that would be called EEP1. Unfortunately, the aircraft currently has some bugs that prevents me from naming it like that. So let's start down here on the EDTO summary, and that's going to be at 5057.2. And the west coordinate for that one is going to be 2018.5. Okay, enter that, and that's number 1. Then we've got the ETP number 1. Again, in the real world it would be named differently, but the sim doesn't allow that, so 5004.6. And the west coordinate for this one is going to be 02515.3. Alright, then next up is going to be the second equal time point. So number 2, let's enter that. And that's going to be at 4740.6. And the west coordinate for that one, 03708.8. Then we have one last waypoint left, and that's gonna be the first exit point. In the real world we would call it EXP1, and that's gonna be at 4638.7. And the west coordinate for that one, 4212.2. Okay, and store that one. Then let's continue on to the flight plans and onto the fix info page. So we've got entry number 1, then we've got our ETP number 1, our ETP number 2, and now something we can do here is to enter our first alternate. And for that, let's first of all request the weather for that one. So that's going to be Shannon, weather request. And that is rather clearly runway 06 in use over there. So let's enter Shannon 06 on here. And now we'd start by drawing some of the radials. So for example, we can do radial 240 on here. And then we could go for 260. And that way you have a nice little visual representation of where your alternate is actually located. So that's a rather nice feature you can use. However, the lines that are drawn over here are much too small in the real world. They are much longer, so that you can actually see that little triangle you're drawing all the way across the Atlantic, and not just in the not just in this kind of view over here. So that's a bug report I will submit to InnyBuilds. Okay, anyway, that is something you can do down there. In case you're wondering why I'm not using the radios to draw any of those rings, just to give you an example, if we enter 400 over here, you can see that's not allowed. That's because the maximum distance, as far as I recall, is 256. Let's just try that. 257, not allowed. Yep. 256 miles is the maximum distance the Airbus allows for a ring. So that's the reason we are helping ourselves differently here with drawing those custom waypoints. We can verify those on the plan page as well. So if we scroll through this, there's our entry number 1, our first ETP located right up here. Then we have the second ETP over here. And last but not least, we have our exit point. It should be visible somewhere here as well, if I had entered it, which I haven't, so nothing to worry about there just yet. Now the next thing we got to do is the track to distance check. So let's turn on the north reference already, bring out the operational flight plan, and then we need to cross-check our tracks and distances with our FMS. So from Adara we have a track of 262, 190 miles inbound to 51 north and 20 west. So Adara, 262, 190 miles, which we can verify down here, towards 51 north and 20 west. Thereafter we continue track 256, 404 nautical miles to 49 north and 30 west. And we have 256, 403 miles, 49 north, 30 west. Then we continue on track 257, 419 miles, 47 north, 40 west. 257, 418, 47, 40. And then we continue along track 257, 434 miles, 45 north and 50 west. And in here we have 257, 433, 45, 50. And last but not least, heading 265, 77 miles towards Raffin. And in here we got 265, 77 miles inbound to Raffin. What's important is that you actually switch the north reference to true for this, because the flight plan, at least in the Lufthansa format, will give you the tracks in true instead of magnetic. So, we could set up a diversion on the secondary flight plan. You can do that, you don't have to do that. So that's completely up to you. Now, some people like to do it, so if we want to, then you go to a lateral revision and then you enter your new destination over there. Shannon, ILS approach 06, insert. You could already go ahead and select the appropriate charts as well if you really wanted to. So we could do Echo India November November, Shannon, weather, we already know that from our electronic flight bag, charts, approaches, ILS 06, we can pin that, and maybe the airport chart as well. Always a good idea to know about your airports. Personally, of course, flying the North Atlantic so often, I am rather familiar with those by now, but in case you're flying along an area where you're not so familiar, you can see runway 06, 3199, and then we have the ILS approach to runway 06 in here. So we can also have a look at the approach itself, ILS 06. Let's bring up that chart. Minimum is 200 feet and 750 meters RVR. And, well, that's pretty much what we need to know over here. So, that's our North Atlantic entry prepared on the FMS. Something else that we would need to do that, however, unfortunately the simulator just doesn't support would be to enter a constant Mach number. Unfortunately, that's not simulated for the time being, so we can't do that. In the real world, we'd enter 0.81 over here at Adara, or whatever is in the no longer existing North Atlantic clearance. Talking about that for a small moment over here, since the 3rd of December we no longer receive North Atlantic clearances, but you still send your request, but you will not receive any answer to that except for request received, and then you just continue in line with your filed flight plan, and that's it. So, I am just going to do another wind update here to make sure that we do have the latest data available. But overall, everything is looking quite good down here. ETA, distance remaining, everything fine. Well, and then I'd say we can go ahead with the next part of the North Atlantic HLA guidance. Okay, prior to Oceanic entry, nav accuracy checked, RVSM, altimeter and equipment is checked, ADS, CPDLC lock-on performed, Oceanic clearance is obtained, FMS cross-checked, nav log is modified as needed, Oceanic clearance recorded, North reference true on, Oceanic waypoint cross-check performed, alternate airports weather and node terms are checked, and the ETPs are decided and set, and with that the guideline is complete. Now, you can of course go ahead and already pre-check the other airports as well, so next we have LPLA, Lajes, search, good weather conditions as we can see, and then last but not least we're going to exit via St. John's if I'm not mistaken, Charlie, Yankee, Yankee, Tango. Over in Newfoundland it's always a good idea to have a look at more airports than just one, so St. John's is good as we can see. Then we can also have a look at Gander, that's gonna be Quebec X-Ray. Gander likewise has good conditions, and something that I personally always like to have a look at, that's Halifax, because Halifax is the next big city on the other side of the pond. And as you can see, Halifax, it's a little bit gusty, but apart from that the weather conditions are okay. So all of those airports are perfectly fine for us to continue the flight. 100 miles till our top of descent, and I tend to say we can go ahead and start our approach preparation for Philadelphia. Overall, we've had a couple of turbulences in our crossing, but nothing really significant, and I tend to say we most of all had a smooth flight for the majority of our service. Now looking into the charts, unfortunately once again they are not working, really unsure why that is, but definitely something that I hope they're gonna fix rather soon. The sun is slowly coming down already, so let's get a couple of sunshades in place over here. Like that, and then time to have a look at the weather and see what it's got in store for us. 28015, gust 28, only high level clouds, 5 degrees, altimeter 3022. That looks quite good to me. Let's go ahead and pre-select that QNH. 3022, here we go. Set once and set twice. Alright then, time to have a look into our FMS for our arrival routing. In the absence of a working chart option within the simulator, let's go ahead and go for a chart option outside the simulator, which is going to be Navigraph, of course. So we do have the gyms for arrival out of bricks coming in for the ILS approach onto runway 27. So that's basically leading us towards gyms, and then from there we are going to get a radar vector onto the final. Of course, a visual approach is always an option over here, and in the US generally not really much of a problem as well. So looking into the charts, we do have the Liberty visual onto runway 27 available. Even though this does not exactly look like something I would want to fly in the A330 over here, especially coming in over JFK Hospital. And a golf course, probably not exactly what we'd want to fly in an A330. Though I'm fairly sure it would be doable, but not for us, not today. Okay, so that means we have 2 runways remaining, and that's going to be either 27 right or 27 left. Now they usually use the left runways for departure, so it's going to be 27 right for our landing. So gyms for arrival, the approach will be the ILS approach onto runway 27 right, which we can find right up here and take into our collection already. Okay, well then, let's go ahead and start checking our FMS. So we're in Mount Rifle at the moment, and from there we eventually end up at Bricks, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, here we go, at Bricks. And then we could proceed via Irkut to gyms. And then on to the downwind. And eventually after MCORD onto a radar vector for the approach. Now a shortcut can be expected over here. We'll have to see what exactly is going to happen. The ILS approach in any case is down here, starting at Martin in 3000. Now that looks wrong, 2100 over here. No, Martin should be at 3000, please. But we shouldn't modify this. So we'll just leave it like that. Alright, 3-degree glide path, Jalto in 2100, that is correct over here. 3 degrees, matches 3 degrees. And in case of missed approach, climb to 1500 and climbing right turn to 3000 in Mount Modena VOR on the radial 115. And that's pretty much what we have over here. Now for the RATNAV page, that means we can take in Modena, Mike, X-Ray, Echo, over here on a 295 course. Progress page, KPHL27 right. And then onto the performance page. So, for the descent, let's take Mach 0.8 and 300 knots on conversion. QNH. Why is it so different in here compared to what we had inside Microsoft Flight Simulator? Got 3069 in here. And weather from 1554. Okay, well. This is quite different, but let's take what we have inside the simulator. Because that's probably going to be the more accurate one. So 3022, 5 degrees, 280 at 15. Okay, and we have a minimum at 211 feet. Here we go. So, landing runway is 2,000, well, roughly 2,900 meters long. We'll be parking over here at Alpha West. So vacate the runway either at Kilo 5 or maybe Tango or Kilo 4, something like that. In any case, we will do a config 3 approach, which should theoretically have changed our speed now. Interesting that it doesn't. VLS should absolutely change between the two. Okay, secondary, copy the active. Well, if the speed doesn't change, let's go the safe way and go conf full. That's probably going to be the better thing to do then. Let's be on the conservative side. In the real world, we'd normally use config 3. But, well, if that's what they say, then that's what they say. Okay, 2,600 feet is going to be the MSA. So we can enter that as engine out acceleration altitude. Fuel prediction, 40 minutes extra. And the secondary is simply copy of the active. So, auto brake low. And that's it already. Okay. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and start with our briefing, please. Alright, Jims for arrival, MSA 2600, ILS approach runway 26 right, down to a minimum of 211 feet, the go around straight out to 1500, right turn bearing 295 inbound Modena, climbing 3000. Extra fuel and time, we have 40 minutes of fuel on board. Excellent, thank you. So we'll use flight director guidance for manual ILS approach. Config full, and we are going to use maximum reverse thrust. Auto brakes low, and we'll vacate the runway to the right. I don't have any hotspots for the taxi in. Special or non-standards, do you have anything? Nope. Okay, so threats for the arrival. To be completely honest, the only thing I have is a possible shortcut that we might expect on the arrival. Unfortunately, the secondary flight plan is bugged over here and doesn't do any predictions, so I guess we'll have to leave it at that. Questions? No? Wonderful. Alright then, let's say goodbye to our passengers. Liebe Gäste aus dem Cockpit, Ihr Kapitän, wir werden in Kürze unseren Sinkflug Richtung Philadelphia starten mit einer verbleibenden Flugzeit von noch etwa einer halben Stunde. Das Wetter in Philadelphia derzeit 5 Grad bei einem westlichen Wind. Wir bedanken uns ganz herzlich, dass Sie heute Discover Airlines gewählt haben, wünschen Ihnen einen schönen Aufenthalt, gegebenenfalls eine gute und sichere Weiterreise und würden uns freuen, Sie bald wieder an Bord eines unserer Flugzeuge begrüßen zu dürfen. Vielen Dank für Ihre Aufmerksamkeit und wir wünschen Ihnen eine gute und sichere Weiterreise. Ladies and gentlemen, from the flight deck, this is your captain speaking. We will start our descent towards Philadelphia in the next few minutes, leaving a remaining flight time of approximately half an hour. The weather in Philadelphia currently is excellent. Temperature of 5 degrees Celsius and mostly clear skies. We would like to thank you for choosing Discover Airlines for today's flight. Hope you enjoyed it as much as we did, and we look forward to welcoming you again on board of the future service. Thank you very much for your attention. And that's it. So, everything is done and out of the way. Then I'd say we can speed this up once again, and I see you as we're getting a little bit further down into the approach. It is time already. We're getting close to level 100, and we can use that time to start our 10,000 feet flow. So the lights are on, the signs are on, then we have constraints and the LS selected. Speed limit exceeded is copied, we'll correct that in a moment. Cheap is primary, high accuracy, and the start selector is a norm. You might be wondering why I've been using vertical speed mode instead of managed descent for a while here, and that's because I don't think we're gonna fly all this routing over here. Instead, what will happen is we'll get a radar vector to the right, and guess what? That is happening just now. So, heading 330 and descent altitude 4,000 feet on the QNH 3022, provided that that's still the latest. Which it is. Alright, excellent. So with that, sequence the flight plan, please. So merging is going to be our final approach point. Then let's go ahead and extend the center line from there. And that's going to be 088 in radial in. Here we go. Okay. Insert, pull heading, heading. And then let's do another 10 degrees to the right here, heading 340. Alright, approach checklist please. Barrel ref, QNH 3022. Seatbelts on, minimum, baro 211, auto brakes, low, engine start selector, norm, approach checklist complete. Okay. So, the sun is slowly coming down. We have a wonderful view outside, that's exactly how I love it. That's exactly how I like it. Clear skies, beautiful conditions, and I'd say beautiful enough to do a little bit of hand flying here. Autopilot off, and auto throttle off. We're getting slowly back towards the profile. And we'll just keep it right there. Let's descend 3,000. And that's 3,000 blue. I don't really believe that this level of arrow here is correct. We got, well, 3,000 to run, so that's 9 nautical miles. Well, that does mean we can reduce our rate of descent a little bit here. In any case, the airplane should only descend at 1,000 feet a minute here. That would be normal A330 performance. So something like this would be idle. But we need quite a bit of thrust for that. Now, to be completely fair, we don't even need that much thrust, taking into account that the idle thrust would be around about 30%. Instead of the 23% that the ini-build has by default. Okay, so she was smart. She's already cleaned up the cockpit. We can do the same now. This is where sunglasses would come in super useful. But maybe that is something that Microsoft can add with a later version. For now, that's 1,000 to go. Checked. That's a strange kind of engine behavior we hear. We basically wouldn't hear the engines that loud in these situations here at all. This is a little bit overdone at the moment. Especially if, just for test purposes here, I add a little bit of power. Definitely overreactive. Alt star. And in the meantime the ILS is identified. Leveling off in 3000. Let's maintain 250 knots for the time being until we start getting a little bit closer. Airbus does recommend to activate the approach phase 15 miles out. We got a very good headwind at the moment though, 24 knots. So I might just delay that a little bit more. Alright, turn left heading 300, descent altitude 2,100 feet, cleared for the ILS approach. Runway 29. 27 right. Open descent. Checked. Beautiful. Heading right towards Philadelphia downtown. Okay, approach round. And approach phase is activated. So, idle power, level off at 2100, and then we'll let the speed reduce. Alt star. Lock star. Okay, landing right into the sun. Flaps 1, speed checked. Flaps 1. So we'll intercept the ILS at around 6 miles out. And at this deceleration rate, I have a feeling we'll only need minimal thrust input there. Lock. Flaps 2. Speed checked. Flaps 2. And here we are, Philadelphia. Fly slope star, gear down. Go around altitude 3000 set. Flap 3, speed checked. Flap 3. Flaps full, speed checked. Flaps full. So the runway is in sight. The cabin is now ready as well. Landing checklist, ECAM memo, landing no blue, landing checklist complete. Wonderful, that's exactly how we like it. When properly established on the ILS, you should need around 46% N1. And look at that, if I set roughly my 46%, the speed is pretty stable. Checked. Beautiful view flying across the harbor and the aircraft carrier down here. Not exactly sure how that naval base is called though. If you know, be sure to put it in the comments below. Land.
Above.
Checked. Speed checked, correcting.
200. Minimum.
Continue.
$100. 50, 40, 30, 20, 10.
And we have spoilers, reverse green, decel. Manual brakes. 70 knots. Okay, and the next exit to the right. Okay, start the APU. And then let's vacate the runway. And when we're vacated, over to the left again. In the meantime though, very quick cleanup work. Might have overshot a tiny bit over here. So 8 hours and 23 minutes. After landing checklist. Radar and predictive wind shear off. After landing checklist complete. So that's gonna be our stand over there, number 17. Let's see, GSX. Gate. Bravo 17. No follow me needed. Handling by something. Okay, and we go to the right over here. APU avail, shutdown engine 2. Right, over to the left and then to the right again, and then we can go straight into the gate. Bravo 17. This certainly looks like one of those little bit more tricky airports over here. Especially because there is no connection between the taxiway line and the actual gate line, so you'll just have to navigate that on your own. In the real world, they'd probably give you a marshaller, but you get where I'm going with this. Okay, lights off. Alpha 17 is confirmed. Interestingly enough, it shows as Bravo 17 in GSX. So, no marshaller. And in the absence of a marshaller, we'll just have to park freestyle here. Something like this is probably gonna do. Okay. Brake set, APU bleed on, and engines cut off. Cabin crew, all doors in park. Alright, engines running down just nicely, beacon off, seatbelts off. Parking checklist, please. Park and brake out chocks. Brake set, engines off, fuel pumps off, parking checklist complete. Then let's go ahead and connect our jetway. Put some chocks in place, which of course doesn't work. And, well, ground power unit, no, not in the US. Opening the cargoes. Well, one left can open and actually opens automatically as soon as the jetway is connected. So, transponder standby. Fuel. It's almost even. Very, very good. And last but not least, the IRSs in here are okay. Perfect. Then let's delete all our custom waypoints so that the next crew can't accidentally take any of them over. Something you should always do on those ETOPS flights is to turn the IRS off afterwards so that the next crew doesn't accidentally believe that it was the engineers who aligned it, and so that every crew is basically forced to do a realignment process. Alright, and with this, my friends, we have made it over to Philadelphia. I hope you enjoyed this one. Be sure to leave your feedback in the comments below. I'm really looking forward to it. In the meantime, as always, be sure to like, comment and subscribe. And if you really love what I'm doing on this channel, I would appreciate a small donation through the Buy Me Coffee link in the video description below. Thank you for watching and see you all again on the next one.